there are a couple of issues that I think that come up that to me are a little bit troubling in the philanthropy world and in the government world. In the philanthropy world, and I kid some of my friends about this, we have this great focus on funding the symptoms and not going after the problem.
Right.
There's $1 billion corporation that focuses on kids from the birth to 8. You probably know the foundation. And yet they feel good about they're dealing with all these problems that have been created, but they don't cut off the upstream,
Right.
which is the problem,
Right.
and that is on the
Parents.
marriage stuff where you have all these families that break up and they got all these problems, but they don't go up to solve the problem.
Right.
If we ever cut off the stuff upstream, and how do we kind of focus on that? And then we've got the government doing some crazy things, like the government just here in New York State, it was the last holdout on no-fault divorce. They decided in the middle of a big budget crisis to increase the state costs by passing no-fault divorce and hurting children. We're pushing kids into poverty. We got 59% of the kids, of the families where kids under 6, 59% are with single mothers. We only have less than 8%, we have 8% with married couples. I mean, we're pushing people into poverty. We have the government pushing people into poverty. How can we do this? And we can't even get involved in public policy because the government won't let us have public policy and lobbying because they say that's not the role of philanthropy. I think it is. But
Thank you.
those
Thank
are
you,
two
Chuck.
issues. I think there's two huge issues that have to be part of the problem you're trying to address.
Right. Well, Chuck, I couldn't agree more that dealing just with the symptoms and not with the problem generation is crazy. And people work at this all the time. Where do you intervene? You know, the problems are so massive. This is like with disease. You just have to pick a point and decide you're going to start working on the genetic end of it, or on the microbial end of it, or on the disease transfer end of it, or you pick a position and you start to work. First of all, we need public education. We're insufficiently engaged in this discourse on these issues. What generates human ill-being, absence of well-being, whether it's at the poverty level or any other level? I hate to get off on this, but the founders knew that the most important element in continuing a democracy was virtue. Virtue in the people. The most popular book read by the founders, according to Peter Gay, who is a no-joke historian, American historian, was Montesquieu. And he focused on the importance of virtue in the people in order to maintain a democracy. So greed and avarice and the kind of selfishness and ignorance that people think they can maintain in a democracy doesn't work. We have information that's not being conveyed to people, and they are finding it easier because of public policy and because we're not helping people appreciate their responsibilities, the responsibilities of parenthood. People get into situations that doom themselves and their children, and then that creates larger doom in society. So we have to refocus our society, and we have to be willing to speak about generosity and self-discipline, industriousness, thrift. I mean, these were the actual issues that the founders talked about. Nobody tells us that because it seems repressive. Who would want to talk to anyone about thrift? Well, like you should go out and buy as much stuff as possible. Well, some crazy people, but that's like some crazy philanthropists. You know, they take flyers on crazy subjects. So we have a real public education. We have changes in personal behavior that we have to be willing to speak up about. And we have to approach government with an intense focus on the long-range plan, which is not the same thing as the church of what's happening now.
I think the issue that you raise of family structure is something that is much more amenable to the work of philanthropy than it would be to government policy, because there just isn't a consensus among the within government that this is a legitimate issue. And I was involved with this for years with the previous administration and also the current administration. There is no willingness to say anything about this, but there would be and could be and is within parts of the philanthropic world. And my idea would be, rather than try to think of the government department of family strengthening, it would be finding good efforts that are working, that can be funded by foundations and private gifts, that show that this is a way to promote thriving and reduce child poverty.
Exactly.
And then maybe it will be scaled up by government. But I don't think that it hasn't reached that level of acceptance to be made into government policy.
Right.